Good evening and welcome back to the FFS podcast. I'm your host, Pratty, once again, and this is episode number 6 of the Dressing Room series. Now, for those of you who are joining us here for the first time and don't know what the series is about, it's basically everything but football. So, by that, I mean, I interview guests who've been on this particular podcast before. So whether it be from season 1, season 2, season 3, if they're regulars, not regulars, one-offs, we interview them, get to know a little bit more about them, what goes on in their lives. And I suppose the reason I did this was so that I get to know a bit more about my guests, apart from the clubs that they support and the players that they are fans of. I just get to know a lot more about their lives if they want to share it, right? I'm not forcing people who've been on this podcast to come on. Yeah, I'm not got a gun to the head. They're all willing participants. They're all volunteering on to come on to this podcast on this series and talk about their lives. So this is more about me getting to know the guests I've had on this podcast, and I suppose the reason I'm sharing it publicly is so that the audience gets to know a bit more about the guests that I have on the podcast as well. Perhaps you have more in common than you thought. So you've heard people on this podcast before, and you just kind of the strongest sort of relationship that you have with them is that you support the same club, but perhaps there is more to it. You share the same interests, you live in the same country, you live in the same cities, you've done the same sort of education. And I just want to put it out there, get to know my guests a lot more personally, just so that whenever I have them on in the future, I mean, you kind of do sense that we know each other a lot more personal, and it's just not like I've called them last minute to come talk about the club that they support. So we're not going to be talking about football at all in this particular series. So I've informed my guests as much as as much as that. So we'll try and keep that strictly non-football. And yeah, we've done 5 episodes before this. We've spoken to guests who have been there right there from season 1, and I suppose this particular guest on episode 6 is no different. His name is Ajay. And Ajay, before we get to talking about, I don't know what all we're going to be talking about. Like I said, this is going to be off the cuff sort of an episode, but why don't you tell the guests a bit about yourself without giving much away?
All right. So I'm Ajay. As you can see, someone who is on the wrong side of the 30s, right? Someone who likes to live life to the fullest, right? And when I say that, I know it might sound cliched, but every action of mine, every thought of mine, um, you know, every major decision that I've taken in my life is all being oriented towards that. So someone who tries to kind of maximize the canvas as much as possible. That's
Oh,
who I am.
yeah, brilliant. I'm glad you brought up the word canvas because that will be a part of the conversation a little while later. But yeah, somebody on the wrong side of 30 is talking about someone who's on the right side of 30, I suppose. Yeah, just
Yeah.
about. Yeah. But that's awesome. So Ajay, the way I start off this particular series, um,
Mhm.
it started off sort of like off the cuff, like I said, and then it's sort of the way I've gone about starting each episode of mine in the series is how the guest and I met each other for the first time. Like, so,
Mhm.
previously I've had guests who've been in the same school as I am, but it's also been guests who have predominantly met only because of, not predominantly, who have only met because of the podcast, who have never had any interaction before that. And I suppose that's where I would put you in that bucket. I think we met, I suppose, I think
Mhm.
season 1 itself, right? When I,
Yep.
yeah,
It
it
was
was
season one. Yeah.
pretty early on. And yeah, I was looking for, I know I'm not going to talk much about football, but I was looking for a Newcastle fan. And that's when I sort of reached out to, I think, one of the clubs or one of the accounts on social media. I'm not sure whether it was Twitter or on Instagram. And then they gave me your name. So yeah, so I know how I got in touch with you. I want to know as the person who received my message saying, "Hey, would you like to be a part of this podcast and all that?" Like, just a bit about that, like as the person who receives it, because I'm the person sending it, so I know what I felt sending it. But for someone who receives my messages saying, "Would you like to be a part of this podcast?" and all that, I just want to get your thoughts on all of that.
Right. So, to be honest, Praddy, right, since 2000, I would say 16, right. So there have been a bunch of us that represent the Newcastle Forum, that we have been getting all these invites for us to get on podcasts, get on, what do you call it, radio talk shows, um, TV talk shows, as a represent either for India, Asia, or what do you call it, the club that we support, which is Newcastle, right? In that sense, um, you know, when this opportunity came up, where you had reached out to, I think it was the account on Twitter, right? There is a new NUFC or Toonami India, account that is there, and there are about good 150 of us that are really active on it. That then gets filtered through into the WhatsApp group that we have, which is as active as any group that is. And all of us express interest, and it's almost like a round robin thing. I think there's what 20, 10 to 15 of us that usually represent the Indian Newcastle contingent, uh, and it so happened that I expressed the interest, and I was one of those first to express the interest, right? And when that happened, and then we got talking, I think it almost seemed like we knew each other for a long time, right? So in terms of our views of football and what we wanted out of it. Even I think one of the first topics that we spoke about, which was in terms of having Middle Eastern investment into football, I think, and how I think we even our thoughts on football is not really restricted to what goes on the field. We strong very or we have very strong feeling towards what goes off it too. All right. So I think there's so many points of resonance, and I really liked the way some of your shows are conducted, right? Where it's not just about people talking about um, what would I say? People talking about their own clubs. I think there are cases where we have talked very sensitive topics, topics that needed to be discussed, regardless of the audience, regardless of how big the audience is, regardless of the reach. That we are talking the right topics, right? Is in itself a big you know r- point of connection. And I think from then onwards it's just grown stronger and stronger. We follow each other on so many social media platforms. We often make it a point to just get in touch and say hi, what's happening, all
Yeah.
right? So in that sense, yeah. So I
Yeah.
think it'll
Yeah.
continue for a long time.
Hopefully, yeah, definitely. As long as social media is still around, yeah, yeah, I'm sure. But I mean, I'm glad that I could hear that side of it, because I don't really get to hear. I mean, it's just normally, are you in? Are you available? Okay, great. So just do the podcast. Okay, see you. Bye. I've got it then edited. So I'm glad that I could get some understanding. And you mentioned about, it's not about the size of the audience and all that. Funnily enough, and I don't think I've said this before. In season one, I think, because I mean, the podcast is very relatively new. I'd never done something like this before. I think your episode on Newcastle United, you and Akhil had done it. Uh, your episode actually had the maximum number of views at that point of time. I think it obviously later it became, we had a lot more views going on, but at that point I could just see my stat analytics kind of just go like that, and then when your episode came, it went like that and came back down. Okay, and I was like, okay, great. I'm glad. I mean, and that was surprising also because uh, it just felt like, I mean, I've done bigger clubs, right? I've done the big four clubs before Newcastle, and to have to see that sort of spike happen for a Newcastle United, I was like, oh wow, there is a lot of scope that people actually are interested in seeing stuff like that. So yeah, it's something that I hadn't know said much, because even at that point of time, I mean, the numbers weren't crazy, like, in the millions or the thousands that you get in podcasts and for any famous person gets. But for someone who had just started out like that, uh, like I'd seen it like that big spike was like, oh wow, okay, so people are actually listening, and so I was a little glad. So yeah, I just wanted to put that out there. Uh, so
I think it's just that it's a mad bunch that we have,
yeah,
right? More like it's not to kind of put down any other clubs this thing, but I think we are as passionate as it can get in terms of how rigorously and how religiously we follow our club. So I think it's just that anything that is on Newcastle, any in any part of the world, you even just name drop Newcastle, you'll have a good thousands of us that'll get to watch it, right? So
yeah.
that's it.
Yeah, no. Again, for those of you thinking this is all about football, this is not exactly about the podcast. So, like, relax. Don't worry. We're not going to be talking too much about it. So, Ajay, let's move on to, I suppose, the next question that I have is, what are your interests apart from football? Like, we all know the club that you support. We all know the players that you adore and all that. But what are your interests? What interests lie away from sports in terms of other sports as well, or other hobbies that you have?
Right. So to be honest, from a sports standpoint, right from a very young age, I've had the opportunity to represent my school in multiple sports, right? Although I was not really great at any of it, but you can always say that you've represented your club in, represented your school in so many different sports. I got to captain a few of them at various age groups, and yeah, I think that sense, I think it's seeped into who I am as a person, and I think it's also changed. I think once I started playing active sports, and when once you start realizing that you're not the best at it, right? Your perspective towards how you want to contribute as a person in society and in a team, I think everything changes, and that's where I strongly feel towards sports and team sports at that. And I follow a whole bunch of it. And anything that is competitive, anything that can be remotely called a sport, I follow it. Right, right from the I think right from stuff like NBA,
Hmm.
F1, cricket, tennis,
Yeah,
hockey, Olympics, anything, right? Anything that goes under the sun will be something that I'll genuinely be interested towards. Aside from sport, I used to be good at it and then left it for a while and then I picked it up again. Is in terms of any form of art expression, which is writing, sketching, because these are things that I think is a good way to what do you call it, express yourself in art, right? And I think there also you'll find there's a lot of black and white, either in terms of the text or in terms of the sketches that I make. Till most of it will be black and white. I think it's somewhere down the
hmm,
line that football thing is just seeped in everywhere, right?
yeah,
uh, and then I travel. I've been lucky enough to travel for as many places, to as many places as I have been, and what I've done is all of these experiences that I've journeyed through. I've been sure of making sure that I capture all of those images so that it's not just me who's been lucky enough to travel that gets to see it, but just pass it on, put it onto the social media so that others can also get to see some of these wonderful sites, right? So
yeah.
that's about it.
Okay. Now, obviously, I got a couple of questions. We will have to narrow into all of them, right? Okay. So
Mhm.
I do agree. I think in terms of art, whether it be writing, whether it be drawing, whether it be any sort of artistic expression, is so important because I just find it to be the perfect getaway from routine life, right?
So true.
Even a podcast like this, it is artistic in some fashion, right? uh, we're talking about things that we like, and it's just so it's when it becomes work is the worst. When it tries to become like you're just so bored that you have to just do, becomes in a rut, that's the worst. But when you enjoy it, and then it's just the best sort of getaway from anything that you any sort of routine life or rut that you have. So I just feel like whether it be drawing, whether it be writing. So in terms of like sketching, right? I've seen tons of it on social media. how did you get to drawing? Were you inspired by something, or did you just one day think, what, I have some time to spare, let's just try it out?
So I think it's something that is, I think, extremely good at, because I have a few you know uh, awards to kind of show from school. Uh,
Oh,
say
that good.
very
Yeah. Fair enough.
yeah,
I've
very
seen some
young.
of them. They're quite good.
Yeah, very young, and to be honest, I think I was better at it then than what I am now. But I think it's just that
Fair enough.
um, I'm very, I'd say, I think I'm very decent at understanding patterns. Right, everything in my life, in terms of even people, in how I engage with people, understand numbers, understand art, everything. I think it's just patterns, right? And then in that sense, art is also for me understanding a pattern. When I look, most of my art is not things that I've actually created of my own, right? Most of it is mimicking.
Yeah.
There's some other art somewhere else, and it just triggers a thought in my head. I use that as a base and draw something else over it. So that's it. I think it's just I just read patterns. When I see a pattern, I just want to see if I can use some of it into my art, in terms of my expression. So that's about it, man. I think that's the inspiration. I think it, like I said, I lost touch for a long while, and just undergoing a very tough time personally. And I just thought, uh, for me to kind of, I couldn't articulate it to people in words, so I used art as an expression for me to then, uh, you know, draw that emotion out of me and literally kind of empty the well, so to speak.
Oh, that definitely sort of rings true. I feel I was never good at drawing in school, and art class for me was basically a period of a free period, right? Like the art teacher would be at his desk surrounded by a couple of people who would actually be legit into drawing stuff, and I'd be there at the back kind of playing around with friends. And the best thing that I've probably drawn at that point of time was like a fruit basket, because that used to be everyone's cup of tea, right? Just take a compass, draw the basket, and then just, yeah, that used to be my go-to drawing. If anyone asked me what to draw, that would just be my go-to. But of course, and then in terms of drawing, yeah, like you mentioned, I just I few days. I think it was in school or early college days, where I just had some free time. So I was like, okay, let me just draw. So I used to read a lot of comics, so start drawing stuff from the comics as well, and all of that animated stuff. So kind of just, but it was such a release. Like I would otherwise you'd be stuck in front of a laptop or anything. It just was like a release. Like keep that all aside, uh, and then just sort of just draw it, and you lose your mind, or your mind is at least distracted for a good half an hour to an hour, where you're just focused on drawing images, and it was really fun to do.
Mhm.
You mentioned writing as well. Any like what's the did you follow up on that? What kind of writing are we talking about?
I actually write a lot more than I actually sketch. To be honest, I
Okay.
write. Again, my form of writing is poems.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. Again, patterns. Right, where I think I've somehow developed a um, very unique way of writing things, in the sense that it's all layered. So every time I write something,
Mm.
it just, it's so cryptical that I have to kind of go and explain it to people, if indeed there is there is an intended audience for that writing, right?
Oh, there's definitely an intended, like there's a lot of audience for cryptic. Like a friend of mine has a similar sort of thing where he puts up. He doesn't do it often, but when he does, it's quite of these deep, profound, layered this thing. Which
Yeah.
I don't. I mean, I personally don't get it at times. But I guess you have to go through those sort of emotions to sort of have empathy for what's been written, or have an understanding of what's been written. So at times I'll just like it, and he'll be like, "So did you understand what happened?" I was like, "No, I just liked the photo on Instagram." He's like, "Don't do that, please. If you
Uh-huh.
want, like, if you're liking it, at least like understand what's going on, like, or come to me and ask me stuff." Like I was like, "Okay, great." So yeah, I don't know
Mhm.
if that's the same thing or that resonates with what.
Yes and no, in the sense that, like I said, I think the past few years have been really not really great, right, on the personal front, in
Mhm.
terms of me having, you know very tough moments, right? People that whatever things that people get to experience in their lifespan, between myself and my siblings, my sisters, I think they've experienced before each of us turned 30. So um, and that's where I think each of us, like, while you have them as pillars that you can lean on, at the end of the day, there's only so much of your burden that you can transfer onto them. So you really have to then start finding different sources in which you want to engage with yourself, right? And another thing that I think, strongly enough, I believe in that really strongly, is the fact that writing really helps me, you know, find roots within myself, right? And in that sense, it's enlarged my nodes in how I connect to others, where I think I have a larger appreciation of what anyone can be going through, because I know I'm able to articulate what I am going through, rather than a mixed emotion, or just naming that as just having a bad day, or having this or that or the other. I'm able to kind of understand why I'm feeling that, and it's only when I write and I think, oh, this is what I'm processing, this is what I'm feeling. Very simple things, like when you have someone that you love that you lost, right? You understand it's not a loss, right? It is not uh, what do you call it? It is not sadness, it is not anything else. It is that that person isn't there in your life. It is void more than sadness,
Yeah.
right? So those are all things that I wouldn't have otherwise understood, if unless I put things on paper, because there's no guide for all of these things, right? So, and likewise during COVID, I managed to write at least, but what, 5 6 dozens of poems, right,
Wow.
on so many different topics that
Yeah.
were there at the point in time. So I was able to kind of, again, I was just living by myself during that time, right, in the same house that I had my parents, my sisters, and then it just got reduced to me, right? So for me, writing was that anchor that I just held on to until another what do you call it, the waves stabilized, so to speak.
No, I get it. I understand. It's a huge achievement to be able to put into words something like that, because I feel like I I don't write poems. I don't write things that layered, or I don't have that sort of capacity in me. But like, I had a blog that I wrote, but I just feel like writing is, you need to have, first off, you need to have that sort of uh, that focus, uh, and that sort of mentality to be writing, because after a while I would suffer from huge writer's block. I don't know if you had that, where you just sit down, where you want to write something, and everything that you write doesn't seem like the perfect sort of sentence. So I've had issues like that, and it might not, it definitely is not the same as what you go. I'm just saying that it's a huge achievement, because for me sometimes writing is like a struggle, because, and I feel like since I've done the podcast, it's easier for me to speak it out than write it. um,
Mhm.
but I do miss those periods of where I could write down stuff.
Right.
uh, yeah.
Yeah, the only good thing about writing than speaking is you can go back and edit it as many times as you want to. But yeah, but I'll tell you what
Oh,
I
you
think.
you can edit here as well, as long as it's not live. Yeah, I can
God
edit.
bless.
Yeah.
But I think the fact that one of the additional things that I've kind of figured during this entire process is the fact that, I'd say our starting points are different, because I'm not writing for the sake of writing anything. Right? It is just that at that point in time, when I have an emotion, when I'm so, riddled by it, or when I'm so, it's just brimming, right? So you just
Yeah.
want
Yeah.
to have a let off, and you want to also kind of find that stillness in water,
Yeah.
essentially, right?
Correct.
Because
Yeah.
there's so much of chaos that is happening. You just want, like, I don't know, have you seen what do you call it, the how do you call it, the resonance, that when somebody, I saw a video this morning too, where, you put leaves in a water and you just keep
Okay.
shaking it, and then,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you just put it in a vessel that actually conducts sound waves. and you start, what do you call it? It's just an Asian Chinese way or Japanese way, I don't know, where you,
Yeah.
with another metal instrument you start making
Yeah.
circles around that instrument,
Yeah. Yeah.
and in that sense the leaves will then start, you
Yeah.
know, what do you call it, narrowing down to a very limited space. So
Yeah.
that 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 thing of kind of circulating around that metal equipment or metal vessel with another metal equipment is for me writing, because whatever that is happening within that water, right, that thing really channelizes it into one space. That's all I can think of.
No, I mean that's something that I don't think I'd be able to write ever. That's an analogy that probably is something that I won't be able to resonate with. But I do like in the sense that I understand it's a very primitive understanding, but I do get what you mean, what you
Mm.
where you're coming from in terms of writing. It's totally different to what I was going with writing, uh, but like I said, it's still an achievement to be able to do something like that, and especially I suppose COVID did give you the right sort of space and opportunity to write 56, because that period of just emptiness and silence and just complete stillness was the I mean, it would have perfect opportunity to write so much about, because a lot of things were going around as well during that particular point of time.
No,
Uh,
absolutely.
the the other one that the other sort of art that you mentioned was the travel part of it, or something that you spoke about was your traveling. Uh, Top five places that you've been to.
Phew, it's all. I think it's instead of places, I'll probably say experiences, because each place
Okay,
throws a
yeah,
different opportunity or different experience for all of us, right?
sure.
For me,
Experiences go.
yeah, experiences are. Um, I, I I don't want to I don't want to come out as showboating, but I think I've done
No.
uh, like fair few things, right? So um, one, I think the most brilliant experience I've ever had is I was I was in, again, very somber moment. I know, I don't know why am I making it
That's all right.
gray
So,
and
and also
black.
to to go with, I mean, showboating. I mean, I asked you. It's don't you didn't come off by saying, "Hey, you know what? I've gone. Let me talk to you about the extent." I've asked you so that you're okay with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So I was it was around my mom's birthday. I was not keeping, I was not in the right headspace, and she'd been a year since she passed away, and just going through a lot of emotions. And I just thought, okay, you know what, I'm going to go to another city and just have a quiet moment. I was in Zurich, was doing work at that point in time. I just thought I'll go to a quiet town where I have nothing to do with all of this, and just quieten the noise in my head. And I went to Bern.
Mhm.
There I was, and then the Airbnb lady that was there, she was so kind. She picked up that I was not really keeping in the right headspace, and she was kind enough to kind of say, "Hey, you know what? I'm going to be speaking to you until you feel okay." And in that process, we got talking, and it really kind of brought me to my groove, got me back to my groove. And then she then offered that she'll book some, what do you call it, whatever, fun stuff or adventure stuff in Interlaken. I was not
Yeah.
really having that as a part of my plan. I just told her that, you know what, I'm really not in the headspace to do it. And she said, she was as old as my mother's, and she's like, "Kid, I know exactly, having understood what you're going through, and having, I think I have a sneak peek of who you are as a person. I think it'll really do you wonders." So then she booked me this thing. She was kind enough to pay it out of her own pocket. She booked me
Wow.
this thing in
You got
Interlaken, which is
lucky.
just,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I got really lucky. I just did some, I think it's just very simple canyoning that she booked. Right.
Hmm.
And that canyoning, I then went on to do something else. And then at the end of it, I just asked very randomly to the person that was there as the guide, and saying, "You know what, do you guys still have any options for the last, I think not the last, I think it was around afternoon. So do you have any this thing on the skydiving thing?
Okay.
Any
Nice.
any tickets open, or any slots open on the skydiving thing?" So it so happened I was lucky enough that that day the slots were open last minute. Of course, I had to pay a bomb for it, unplanned.
Mhm.
Uh, did skydiving over the Alps, amazing experience. Something that you try and articulate as many times as you want to, you'll still fall short of it. All right. So
For
that
sure.
that for me as an experience, it's considering where I began that weekend and where I ended it. Right, it was exactly the opposite of skydiving, where I started on the ground and then went up.
Yeah, yeah,
Right. So that was one for sure, and then just a few more experiences. I think I don't know how many people have actually seen it. I've seen sunset underwater, very random,
okay.
under the sea, essentially.
Yeah, okay.
Right. This was in Philippines, in Batangas. Again, a work trip, very random, no plans whatsoever. Um, I think it was almost sunset. Right. It was in the golden hours or
Mm,
golden hour or just before sunset. Right. And I just pushed my button and see and try to see if I can still get a slot or still get the boatman to get me around for scuba diving. They said no scuba diving, but snorkeling. But I think that turned out to be an amazing experience where bang in the middle of the Pacific Ocean,
mhm.
right, that I got to see, me probably in the company of 100 fishes. I think just how light functions underwater
Yeah,
is
it is.
it, it
Yeah.
it is. I don't know how many people in the world have seen it. So it's very unique as an experience, and it really kind of puts perspective on how nature stands so tall in front of all of us, in terms of us as people, our egos, our politics, our fate, everything. Right? It just there's no this thing whatsoever. Aside from that, I think there's so many different experiences, so many different places. Each of it is just been amazing in their own way, right? So yeah, so that's it. I think you want me to name. I think these are
No,
experiences, but
that's fine.
places it could be
No, no.
different.
I mean, I suppose experiences are probably are even better than the cities because you're really specifying certain things that I mean I feel like the experiences count a lot more than cities. I mean you can just name cities, but it's nice that you had certainly. I mean the Switzerland ones is just superb. It's something that you could probably, I don't know, make into a feel good movie story, I suppose. Or yeah, it just feels right out of a
Where
novel.
I began the day from, but
Yeah,
definitely where I ended it. Definitely, I think it could be a feel good movie.
no, the whole journey itself, it's just something out of a novel, right? Like you go, you don't feel right, you meet someone amazing, you know, at this place, and then you go on this crazy adventure. Yeah,
And
I
and,
mean, it writes
and
itself.
no, absolutely. I think the thing that actually made me feel which is better, but put things into perspective, is the fact that she was a cancer survivor.
Ah, okay. Yeah,
Right. And then you start thinking, you know what? I've lost a person for sure. She's also lost a person, but
yeah,
she's literally gone through it and come back on the other side. Right. Then you start
yeah,
thinking your problems start, you
yeah.
start understanding
Lessening. Yeah,
where
yeah,
your
yeah. Or
problems lie.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah,
Oh yeah, that
crazy stuff,
definitely
man.
puts it into perspective. But it's insane. I mean, to meet such people, it's so rare at times as well. Y- most people are just said, "Here's my Airbnb. I'm off. I'm not even going to talk to the person being there." But yeah, I've had some people where they've been quite. Uh, I wouldn't say like they've been homey as well as they've been quite like. I can't really
Engaging.
engaging, yeah, yeah. They've been
Mm,
engaging, they've actually been interactive, and they've really sort of tried to make you feel the most comfortable that you've been. And those are the ones that you probably remember most, right? Rather than the Airbnbs itself, it's the people who probably run them
absolutely.
and all that. So so that's the thing. So rather than talk this about the cities, I'm glad that you spoke about the experiences because they're the ones that really count. So if I go to a city, and fair enough. I've been walking around multiple cities. That's all great, but the experiences which really stand out, those are the ones that you'll remember for forever. And
A lifetime. Yeah. And
yeah,
I
yeah,
think I'm a strong believer that, to be honest, right, I don't plan any of my travels, and that's why I end up spending so much
yeah.
more on it,
That's what I was
right?
saying.
Then,
That's
but
insane.
most of the things that I've actually done. are all impromptu travels. I think there's this quote from Shantaram, right, which is there's something special about being at the right place at the right time at the right moment with the right people, right, and just being lucky, right, and if you don't expect anything out of it, right, the amount of surprises life can throw back at you will be that much more higher. So I'm a firm believer in that, and even when I go to cities, to be honest, I think I think uh, I've covered a decent this thing across wherever across the globe, right? And all of these experiences have been so random, so unique, things that uh, I've lost my passport twice,
Wow.
right?
Okay. Yeah.
Uh,
Okay. See,
and
yeah.
I've also had an experience where I was bang in the middle of Egypt during their spring uprising in 2010, 11, right? And I was had a gun pointed to me. I don't know how many people have actually seen an AK-47, but I had it on my back, right? So it's like again, and that like what you said, right? These are moments when you look at it, uh, you are left to one random kind act by a stranger, right? Any random stranger, and it is because of that that you turn that corner, right?
Yeah.
Again, just saying that more often than not, you know, you're left to one act of kindness from a random stranger, right? And that's what helps you turn a corner. So in that sense, yeah, I think, yeah, I think you just have to just go, put yourself out, see what life comes back gives you back.
Yeah. I suppose that's where we diverge. I can't possibly see myself doing. I don't know. In the sense that I suppose the reason I say I can't see myself doing that is because the whole you need a lot of visas, all of that. Say for example, I'm in Europe. That's possibly more easier said than done, I guess, to just one fine day get up and say I want to go to this country. Or if you got the visas, then fair enough, and you got the money. So two things definitely prevent me from doing that. uh
Yeah, so I think to be honest, it's also got to do with the kind of work that I'm doing. So it just helps me
it does,
really then
of course, yeah.
uh, uh, branch out and do all of these, have these adventures.
Yeah, my dad's the same. So he travels a lot for his work. So he's had, Egypt as well, been sort of kidnapped in a way where he's taken off to some random places and all that. So, yeah, when you travel for that, for unfortunately, my work isn't like that. So, haven't had that courtesy. But yeah, I wish I could have the, or rather, yeah, I hope I have at some point the luxury of being able to do that. I'd certainly love to do it, but unfortunately, given the passport that I have, given the the sort of countries that I'm allowed to visit, and the amount of money that you need to earn to get that, not yet, but hopefully soon. Let's
Hopefully,
touch wood. Yeah. All right. So,
that's true.
Ajay, let's talk about the sort of the final topic or the final question that I have for you. You've moved to UK quite recently from Chennai, and where in the UK, why to the UK, and what are the differences that you've seen from living in Chennai to going to the UK?
Moved to the Birmingham office. I
Ah,
think not Birmingham office as actually. I think I moved from the. I'm a chartered accountant doing risk consulting. So I was with one of the big fours, and then moved with them. Not moved with them. I think it's almost like I kind of applied, got through, and then moved to the UK practice here. Uh, that's the what aspect of it. The why aspect of it, I think it's always part of the long term plan, right? Always wanted to move outside, live for a few years, and see if I can make myself at home. The largest difference is Chennai was home. I think everything that I represented, everything that I think I am, I think Chennai was it, right? So I'm so deeply connected with it. As much as the photographs and the this thing, the travel and all of that stuff, Chennai. I don't. I think the last year and a half, I was just looking at it. With COVID and everything, I'd done 18,000, not 18, I think 15,000 kilometers in Chennai. which is
Jesus,
just me.
that's a lot.
Yeah, me just driving all around the city. Every single night I used to take the car out and then drive around the city because I love the city so much. So that's what Chennai meant to me. From there to Birmingham, I think it's also a place that represents the same values. It lets you
Yeah,
be as a person, right? And it's very welcoming. I think one of the things that you'll see at the what do you call it, the main cathedral is right just next to it is that it's a place where you can belong. That's what would have been. That's what is written there, right?
yeah. I think Birmingham is probably like the closest that you can get to
India,
replicating India.
India.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that is true.
Uh, because I, I
So
I was in Coventry for a year and I was like, it's not that different. Like
it is not.
it's not that different. I
Yeah.
it's the same. Yeah. I didn't feel like I was in UK, if I can call it white territory. It
Mhm,
just felt like everywhere around the corner, I'm either looking at a Middle Eastern kebab shop or a grocery owned by someone of
mhm.
of an
Asian.
Asian or Middle Eastern descent,
Yeah.
or yeah, the next, yeah, it just felt the same. So yeah, go on.
No, I think that's it. I think yeah, I think in that sense, Birmingham has been really kind to me. The work culture is also a huge difference that I've seen from
Yeah.
there to here. People are much more relaxed. People, to be honest, give a lot more respect than what they used to back home. So it's kind of it's a pleasant surprise, right? So yeah, in that sense, I think I'm still trying to find my feet under the table. Hopefully in a few months I can call Birmingham home, but nothing comes close to Chennai. Nothing.
I I think that's the same for everyone, right? Like if even if I were to move to the UK or something, even if it was for 4 5 years, 6 years, or even I was in Delhi for 6 years, undergrad and work. Uh, Even if India is home like that, I like Dubai was is and will always be. Like you cannot. I don't think there are places that you can that will be able to take away or be able to replicate or not replicate, but replace
Home.
home. Yeah, it can
Yeah.
be any
I
place.
would say.
Like I just feel like it. I mean, for people I've known who've probably been in Dubai for school and then who've gone to Canada and stuff like that for undergrad and have been there since then. Even if they've got Canadian passports and all, it just feels like they still speak about Dubai as home, and it just feels like it just. I mean, that's where you've been born. That's where you've been brought up. That's where you probably got most memories, or yeah, you remember a
Yeah.
lot of stuff. So yeah, I totally understand that.
Yeah.
But
So I think
hopefully it does. Hopefully it at
yeah.
least comes close.
Hopefully soon comes close. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's all I'm hoping for. To be honest.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that you don't want a place to be that you've gone away, or if you've emigrated, or if you've traveled, or you've gone somewhere else, you don't want that place to make you miss home. In the sense that you don't want Birmingham to be like, oh, shouldn't have really left Chennai, shouldn't have really left Dubai. That's the one thing that you don't want it to be, right? You don't mind Birmingham being the city that it is. You don't mind having fun, all of that. It may not be home, but you don't want to be like I wish I really regret that decision. You don't want to regret that decision. That's I suppose the only major.
No, I'll tell you what. I think you think that way, but you're always better off with bad experiences as much as you're better off
Oh
with good
yeah, yeah,
experience, right? I was in Dubai. I lived in Dubai for about 3 years between when I was 19, 20 until I was 22, 23. Absolute horrific, terrible experiences. It was almost like a, what do you call it? I went there as an intern, but ended up becoming a bonded slave. Um, yeah, that's where I
yeah.
think it's, your experiences. But when you think of, like, I think when you think of all those experiences, you always come through. When you come through it, right, you always become a better person, a bigger person. You have more rounded perspectives about things. So yeah.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. I completely agree that see whichever city that you're going through, it will have its good, it will have its bad. If it is bad, fair enough. You've learned something. You probably will learn from making that mistake, or you probably look out for those sort of areas or those particular instances where you don't want to replicate them. all I'm saying is, in an ideal world, you would not want to be filled with regret. Unfortunately, we don't live in a utopian world where every decision that you take is going to be the right one. So, for example, I moved to Delhi. I mean, it was a huge culture shock, right? From Dubai to Delhi. As much as it would have been Chennai to Dubai would have been a massive thing, Dubai to Delhi was probably even more. So, uh, I barely knew the language. Yeah, all of that stuff. So there were good things, there were bad things. You got to take them both. I'm glad that I'm not saying that I I regret it. I'm glad that I went there. At least coming out through it, you learn a lot more, like you said. But yeah, it just, you will learn in the future. You know what you like. You know what you don't like. So in certain cases, you will still make the same mistake. You will still again learn through it. You'll make it again. You'll still go through it. That's all part of life. But I just meant in an ideal word, you really don't want you if you were looking at a place that you really want to call home, you don't want it to be a nightmare. So that's all it is. Um, and yeah, it takes as much effort from your side as it does from the city side as well. So you can't go in saying, oh, I hate this place, I hate this place. Like, give it a chance, and then maybe we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, in my case, I think Newcastle is just about 3 hours and 46 minutes to the dot
Yeah,
from where I am right now. So I
I
think,
saw that photo of you being in the stadium. So
yeah,
um
crazy.
yeah, because so I don't know, so there's this other uh, guest on this podcast called Alankrit. So he's from Chennai as well, so he is in Sheffield. Uh, so we were talking about the same thing, moving from Chennai to the UK, what differences. But he's there as a student, so his his idea of the culture difference being different was a whole lot more. I mean, because as a student, I've obviously got a lot more time to decide if
Hmm.
that's I suppose the pro of being on the right side of 30, isn't it?
I don't know, mate. I still don't know, to be honest.
No, yeah, I don't think even I will. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like I said, the reason I'm doing this full sort of series is so that I get to know a lot more about the guests that I interview. I don't think if I'd done this, I wouldn't have known about your experiences. I wouldn't have known about the burn travel. I wouldn't have known about the Philippines. We would have just known each other for being like, okay, you support Newcastle. Okay, you want to be on the podcast? Let's go do this. Let's go. Okay, see you. Bye. I seen your. So I mean, the most that I knew about you is that you like drawing because on social media, and that you'd moved to the UK because you were in Chennai, which funnily enough, I know you mentioned I think it was end of season one where I said that you were from Bangalore at an end of season video, and then you were like, "No,
Yeah.
dude, I'm in Chennai." I was like, "Why did I think you were in Bangalore?" So yeah, I would have got that also wrong. So yeah, I mean
Uh-huh.
that's I'm glad that we could do this, but I unfortunately that's all the time we have for this particular interview. So thank you, Ajay, for coming on here and just talking
Th-
about your life and everything else. Uh,
yeah. Thank you. I think, like I said, I think it's an interesting thing, right? Where you it'll also entice people to come on the show because you're not seeing them. Like I said, I think this goes in theme with uh, what you're trying to do, Praddy, right? Which is nothing is at a surface level. You want to know everything, uh, you know, that goes all around it, right? I think same is the case with football. Same is the case with how you engage with people that come on your podcast. I think in that sense, it's always been unique, and I think it'll continue to be unique. So thank you so much, and hopefully I put all of the things in black and white, even if there was
yeah.
some gray in it. I've tried to articulate it as black
Oh,
and white.
it's always better in black and white. Uh, I mean, it's always so much
Gray,
better. Black and white is so much better
yeah.
than color.
Will you shed red for black and white?
Yeah, let's see. That's a bit too much, but it depends on who our owners are going to be, possibly. uh, I mean, if it's the
All
same,
right.
then I doubt it. But I think, yeah. I mean, like you said, the reason I did this was so that I get to know guests a lot more. I just felt like when I do these podcasts with people, it feels like, yeah, I know a bit about you because I've spoken to you. I might have chatted to you, like even you, or even people who've been regular, right? I've chatted with you at the most about football, a lot
Mhm.
on football, maybe a little bit about other things as well, but predominantly football. And so when we get onto a podcast, yeah, we know each other well because we've done multiple episodes, but we know each other just from a podcast perspective. And I suppose for everyone, or from a football perspective, and so everyone watching us will know, yeah, these guys are good regulars. They know each other, at least they've done multiple episodes. But I mean, I felt like there was that little a piece missing in terms of that relationship between guests, and I just wanted to get to know more about people, because I'm sure a lot of my guests on this podcast have probably got 10 times more interesting life that I have, and uh, yeah,
Don't discount yourself, mate. I
no,
think
no,
we could switch roles, and you'll have, when you start articulating, it'll just beam like
yeah,
more
yeah, yeah. I'm not saying that my life is all like just in front of a laptop and all of that, but they definitely have lives that are different, and that makes it more interesting. So
absolutely.
I'm not saying that they're more, they're richer, so they've gone to 10 times more countries that I have, and they've done this and all. I'm not being envious, but I'm just being like, they definitely have lives that are much more, they're doing things differently. Like, people are doing stuff on mental health, advocating all of that. People are doing stuff in football, like, so they're leading different lives, and I just wanted to get to know a little bit more. And that's, again, to people listening, this is all voluntary. I'm not the person in Egypt putting
Don't
an
say the gun.
AK-47. Yeah, I'm not putting. Now that you said that, I have that analogy. At least I'm not putting an AK-47 behind Ajay or anyone else on here.
Yeah.
Now, I might be from the Arab country, but I'm not in those values. Not those values, people. So you're
Wrong
all
time to
welcome
speak
here.
this stuff. Wrong
Yeah,
time to
it's
kind
okay.
of call this stuff out. Especially with the Qatar World Cup.
Yeah, that's okay.
God
But
bless.
yes, thank you to those of you listening to this, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if I'm sure if you do have things that you resonate a lot with, Ajay, you've also traveled a lot. You also write poems. Do let us know in the comment section below. We love to hear from you. Please do also let us know if you want to be a part of the podcast as well. You will get your turn eventually. It's not like you will first come onto this podcast or this series. We will have you on the major series. We'll talk to you about football, and then, of course, eventually you will find your way here. This is, I suppose, the end goal for everyone who comes onto the FFS podcast. The
God
sort of,
bless.
yeah, the sort of, yeah, I don't know what they give you after like 10 years of service, or like a sort of medal or something. So this is sort of that, like, welcome, thank you for being a regular. This is, instead of
So
giving you
it's
instead of
so
giving you any
weird to
sort
kind
of
of
gift. Yeah.
yeah, I'm just saying it's so weird to kind of talk about yourself on our podcast, right? You'll never
Yeah.
have that opportunity.
Yeah.
No. Thank you for making me see, like your minute to minute, like exactly. This is my moment. This last 1 hour, I think I've peaked in life. Thank
Yeah.
you so much.
So the thing was, when you said like you were scared of being, showboating. I mean, you're only going to be showboating if I was doing this alone and I clicked record and like, so let me tell you about the countries I've been to today, and that would be, I'm just, this allows you to talk about your adventures without being sort of nervous of being showboaty or whatever. So yeah, but to those of you listening, yeah, eventually you will have a chance. If you want to be a part of the podcast, do let us know. You can follow us on social media, whether it be Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Try to be as active as possible. And I'll catch you all soon. We're probably doing something about the World Cup. I know I'm a bit late, but yeah, there were things before that. So probably try and do something about it. And I'll catch you on the football edition sooner rather than later. But until then, thank you all for listening to the FFS podcast. I'm your host, Praddy, once again. This is episode number 6 of the Dressing Room series. And I'll catch you all on the next one. See you.